Hi, today we're actually interviewing Mark Kilby. Mark Kilby's over in the United States. Without further ado, Mark, would you like to introduce yourself and give the viewers a little bit of a taste of who you are and what you're about?
Sure. So I am have been an agile coach now for I can almost count in decades. It's kind of scary, but worked across a number of different industries. Worked in government as well, both at the federal and state level here in the United States. Uh, Worked in many different places where agile was not supposed to work, and certainly wasn't supposed to work remotely, but we found ways to make it happen anyway. So that's been a lot of my experience. These days, I'm an independent consultant and trainer, training on things such as remote AF, and helping people understand that vision of you can work successfully anywhere.
That's a really good point. Is it's what we call locality agnostic now, Mark.
Yes, location free.
That's the one. Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah.
And you should mention also that you've written a book, correct?
Yeah, there is this little book I happen
Here's
to
one you had earlier. Yeah,
I just happen to have, and if I get past the green screening.
there it is. Yeah, that's it. That's the one.
Yep. So co-authored with Johanna Rothman, From Chaos to Successful Distributed Agile Teams. And I'll point out this was written before the pandemic.
Yep.
So this is not one of the pandemic published books.
Yeah, and I'd read it previously, and the reason we ended up with you in Raph is because we were doing a talk, and then you and I connected within a room, and it became very synapsy around the fact that what we were trying to achieve, what you'd written, and hence where we're at. So I guess that leads me to a bit of a question there for the listeners and viewers is why would you choose to use the RAF framework over all the other patterns and options out there that you've seen?
Well, so one of the things I really appreciate about RAF is it does not impose a certain approach, which some frameworks will. I won't mention any names, but having that flexibility of being able to pull in the elements an organization needs. For me, while most of my work has been remote, I've worked with location-based teams and organizations. I've worked where there's clusters in different places. And yes, you can bring in a standard approach or a standard framework, but you always have to tune it. You always have to tailor it to the organization. That's why we have continuous improvement, is how do you tune it so it works for the business and the marketplace? And that's what I like about RAF is it comes with those expectations. And so there's a lovely set of patterns in there with, well, you could probably say better than I can, but at least from what I've seen, decades of experience and just really solid research also in these patterns that people can use these and feel confident. Hey, this has worked in certain contexts, and it might work for us. So having that modularity, having that depth, and it's not something that got spun up in the pandemic, because there's a lot of those. What's the term? False prophets, I guess, that we've seen pop up, saying I have the solution, but. Yeah, and that's why, because in the book that Johanna and I wrote, really a lot, much of our standpoint was you cannot pick just an approach and go with it. You have to adapt it to how you're distributed as a remote team. Are you hybrid? Are you fully remote? And that's what I really appreciate about RAF is it has that flexibility to adapt for the business and where the business is in the market.
That's brilliant, and I think that's what we strive to do. So thank you for saying so. One of the things that we drive within the auspices of remote agility framework is what we call our guides, and of course we skill people up to be guides in the remote agility framework so they can use it. Right, so it's not beholding to remote agility framework. But I guess this is the question we get a lot: what is a guide, right? So
Yeah.
no better question to ask a guide. So Mark, without further ado, what do you think a guide is in terms of the remote agility framework?
What is a guide? In 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 some ways, it can almost be like, what is a coach? So so uh, I'm sure I haven't listened to all the prior recordings, but I'm sure there's many different interpretations. But for me, it's you in general, anytime you bring a guide into your journey, it's somebody who has experience. They've gone down maybe not just this path, but other paths. And so they knew not only the dangers and the advantages of taking certain parts of the path, but what they've learned from other experiences. And so they're guiding you in the best way possible. So to be a little more specific, having experience with different types of industries, different size of businesses, different types of remote, because just saying remote or hybrid remote, there's a there's many variations under that people don't realize. And so does does this person that's helping you along this path have that experience? A good guide will. And many of the guides that I've met in our community definitely have that experience. And that's why I really appreciate collaborating with the community.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, one of the things we're driving about our community is actually that the guides drive the continuous improvement back into the framework, because you're the team that are out there working with people. And as you said before, um, no one framework fulfills everything. It's not the one ring to rule all rings, so to speak. So
No.
we're always looking for how do we respond to the next challenge, because this whole remote, or remote-ish is the way I call it, because you never know what blend is, right? Is moving so fast that we have to continually respond to that VUCA. So it's an interesting point. Um, and the other reason I do bring that guide type thing up is of course, obviously the way that we do it is we have a guides course, and you've been through that guides course. And I think it's interesting for people just to hear from someone who's been through it. What's it like compared to a normal training course? Because we try to explain that to people, that it's not just your bog standard training and we set you loose.
Yeah. For something like the guides course, you have to realize you're probably going to learn as much from the other people in the course as you will from who's delivering the course, because you're walking in with people with many different experiences, so they've been on those other paths that maybe you haven't been on. And the point of being a guide is you should always be learning and be willing to listen and learn and determine, is this information relevant for what I have now, or is it something I put in my kit for later? And this is what that course gives you the opportunity to do. You learn the patterns, you go deep into some of the patterns, but you also tap into the knowledge of some of the others who might have used those patterns or something a little bit different to those patterns. And is this something you could use now, maybe with current journeys you're on with clients, or is it something you kind of stash away and also keep that reference, keep that connection with that person who shared that information, because you might want to tap into more of that knowledge later. So it's not just a course, it's getting plugged into that community. It's that starting point.
We have guides, as you know, we have guides in Africa, we have guides
Yeah.
in the UK, and in guides in Australia. So it is really a global community as well, as what we're striving to bring together. So for anyone that's listening to this, investigate the guide thing, because we really would like to have you on board. Um, I think it'd be interesting for people listening to hear some experiences, or if you can share some knowledge about how you've used the RAF patterns at all, Mark.
So the one that I have tended to refer to the most is the team launch canvas. Uh, I For that one, I have referred people to it. I have used that, but it's understanding you don't have to go through that whole canvas. You don't have to go through all the patterns in that canvas to launch a team. Uh, you can do it in stages. You can do it in pieces. Maybe you have a very urgent need, and there's parts of it you can start with now and parts you can do later. but the idea is it's a canvas that's never really done. You also revisit it as maybe the team changes or some of the work changes. You might want to go back to that canvas and look at it and look at how you need to change some of the working agreements, for instance, or the hours of overlap piece is another one. It's like if somebody has a change in their schedule, how does that impact the whole team? Those are useful patterns and tools in that particular canvas.
That's interesting because that's the modularity that we build into it. Because so for those that are listening, when we talk about modularity, we have modules in terms of whole patterns, but each of the patterns are modular in their own right.
Yeah.
And that's what we strive to do. So that in Mark's use case, you can pull the different pieces apart, or you can use the sum of the whole.
Yeah, and you can even do at least in my case, when I've had to quickly launch a team, you can sort of do light versions of some of those patterns and then go back and go deeper. And
Mhm.
we even did that in some cases in the guides course as examples. I remember doing that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, we try to get that experience of the different ways you can use it, and we're learning as well because as we do the guides and we hear from the guides, we hear different ways they've used it, but we never even thought that. You go,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's an interesting one. So that's feeding back in as well, helps us to evolve. But that's really good, Mark. So we spent a bit of time on the RAF stuff, and this is not meant to be just a total a spruik for RAF for anyone who's
Yeah.
listening. Just those questions, I think it's important for people to hear. You're out there, you've been working in this remote and this distributed environment, and certainly since COVID, I try not to get too much on that stuff,
Yeah.
but since that's hit us, the remote or remote-ish thing is really accelerated. Be interested to have your view, what you're seeing as the biggest challenges now.
Well, I yeah, challenge is probably the better way to put it. Uh, I I think just as we're not sure when COVID will end, I don't think we're really sure when this shift to remote will end. So let me clarify that a little bit. Right now, a lot of the companies that weren't prepared to go remote and were forced to go remote are now almost being forced into hybrid remote as a stopgap measure. They're afraid to lose staff who want remote work. They've some have gotten used to it and they like it and they want to use it. Um, Matter of fact, there was an article I came across earlier today that was talking about how some organizations are designing for that and designing policies, but they're highly restrictive. And so those companies that are they're kind of been forced into this way of working have missed one of the key parts of remote work, and that's choice. So if you're not designing choice into the system, and I don't mean anyone can do anything at work, but it's understanding where's the best place for choice among the team, where's the best place for choice across a program or team of teams, and how much flexibility can we give? Because if we are hiring highly skilled knowledge workers, why not allow them to make more decisions? Let them use their knowledge. So but a lot of companies are not seeing this yet, and so they're trying to design for hybrid. I think they're going to find stressors in working hybrid. They're still going to try to have a in-office schedule but work hybrid. They're going to struggle with hybrid, and then a few months later they're going to, as things hopefully evaporate with the pandemic, they're going to decide we're either going to go fully in the office, or we have enough people that really want to work remote, maybe we should seriously pursue what it means for us to go remote. And so I think we're going to see another set of shifts around hybrid to remote or hybrid to fully back in the office.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to see it's sort of a bit of a scale thing, right? Which way is the scale going to tip for them? And
Yeah.
what I do see out there at the moment is a lot of people saying, "Well, we don't want to come back," right?
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people across the world, and I'm interested to hear what you're hearing. But I do hear that thing around, the reality is, take my own example, rather than talk out of school, but I used to commute 3 hours a day. I don't do that anymore. And I'm not keen to do it again.
No.
I'm not the only example of that, right? People are saying, well, we can do our job and we don't have to do that commute and we can spend time with our families. So I think
Yeah.
that's that thing on the scale. How do they work with that, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's the key is we've all started to rethink how we work, but how much flexibility do we have in defining that? So that's kind of getting back to that choice. So it's really a fundamental shift in work. In a way, it's having us rethink. I think the best way to describe it is almost going back to a craftsperson kind of model. You've kind of come up the ranks, you've gained experience in the craft, and you are trusted in your area of expertise to make the right decisions, instead of you will be here from this period of time to do this job. And so we're just seeing fundamental shifts, and there's a lot of variables to try to juggle to figure out where it's going to go. And to answer your question, I have to be careful answering that question because where am I usually hanging out? Online. so asking other people that, it's like, yeah, I'm hearing a lot of people who are online say that. I'm reading different articles here in the US. Some are saying 50 to 60%, some are saying 30 to 40% want to stay remote. But you see enough upheaval in different companies, very visible upheaval. Looking at you, Apple, that and among others, that they're realizing they've intertwined part of their culture of being in location, and that might be difficult to hold on to.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think back in the beginning of this, when we first started working with it, we were saying the reality of it is that the other thing that organisations have cottoned onto very quickly now is they can have anyone work from anywhere in the world, so they can have the brightest talent at the brightest places at the brightest times, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think
And on that note, it used to be difficult to navigate all the different state and country laws, but now you've got pop-up organizations that handle that for you. So even those HR functions to navigate all those different uh, legal and taxation rules are starting to be supplied. So that burden is off the business as well. So we
yeah.
truly are getting to that point. Yeah.
And even the office setup and the the typical workplace and safety things. There are organisations who are dealing with that now. Like there was an organisation who offered me a job. Sorry, but they offered a very large stipend to set my office up.
Yeah.
And have someone come out, no matter where I was in the world, set my office up, survey the office, make sure it's workplace and safety, and give it the tick. And I was like quite impressed with that. And I went, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and there's other companies. I'm trying to think. Is it First Base? I think that they provide that service as well. So if you have to maintain certain health and safety regulations, and you want to have a certain setup so you can manage your budget for that kind of outlay, you've got a company you can outsource all that to.
Fantastic. Yeah. Mark, look, we could talk for hours, you and I. We
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah. And we have. So, yeah.
Nobody wants to listen to us talk for hours. So we've sort of reached the end of our time. What I would like to do, though, is give you the opportunity, because I know you have a business and you're a trainer in your own right, and you're spending your time talking to me today. Would you like to let everyone know how, A, they can get a hold of you and some of the things that you could do for them?
Sure. So if you are still struggling with what it means to be remote, how to work effectively as a remote team or an agile remote team, that's something where I can help you with in consulting or training. I offer courses in that as well. And also, you could reach me at my website, markkilby.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter, and you will hear me sharing various ideas, tips there as well, and sometimes even talking to Tony online.
And you can find him in the guide area of remoteaf.co. So
Also there.
don't forget that as well. Look, Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure. On behalf of Remote AF and all the remote things, thanks for spending time with us.
Thanks, Tony.